I'm excited to be here with you all today, and I will pass it over to my other MEA folks to give a quick little introduction, really quick.
I'm in a busy coffee shop, and this is Diego, section chief for Clean Transportation. Just here to listen.
Hi everyone, I'm Pratiksha Ganeshan. I am the Transportation Energy Specialist. It's very nice to meet you all and hope we can learn a lot today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gary Aim. I'm the Innovation Partnership, and then sometimes it goes around transportation. There's a lot of faces here, names here that I'm familiar with. Nice to see you all, and let's have a wonderful conversation today.
Okay, and we also have Larissa and Sophia who are joining us as well from my team. So I will pass it over to our WRI folks, and then after that we can go to Generation 180, and then we will get to NREL as well. So let's do that really quick as well.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Phil Burgoyne-Allen. I am the manager for technical assistance and policy implementation at the Electric School Bus Initiative at the World Resources Institute. I'm based in New York City and happy to be with you all today. Thanks for having us. And I will pass it over to my colleague, Ben.
Hi all, my name is Ben Hazansky and I'm a research analyst with the Electric School Bus Initiative at the World Resources Institute, and I'm based in Washington, D.C. and excited to be joining you all today.
Thank you. Okay, so Kristen, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Natalie. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Keim from Generation 180, a clean energy nonprofit that is supporting school districts in making decisions around clean energy. So really excited to be partnering with MEA on these grants and excited to talk about how we can help support you guys applying for these grants.
Awesome. Okay, so last, I'll pass it over to Mike Jones at NREL.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Jones. I'm a project lead here at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL for short. I was actually with MEA for many, many years before coming over to NREL, so it's great to be back with you all and see some familiar names, and looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. Okay, great. So with that, I'll just give a brief layout of what the agenda is going to look like. So we just did our lovely introductions. Next, we will pass it to Kiba, who is with Prince George's County, just to give a little introduction about their experience purchasing electric school buses, and all the different aspects that come along with that, may it be challenges or anything like that. And then we will get into a brief electric school bus EV 101 presentation I have, just to kind of show a few different aspects of the process. And then we will get into the three major presentations that we have for you all today in terms of different grants and funding that is available to you all. And then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So Kiba, if you're ready, please go ahead and just provide any insight you have. We're here, so we're ready for you.
All right. Thank you, Natalie, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kiba Baldwin. I am the Transportation Director of Central Garage for Prince George's County Public Schools. Here, we have roughly over 1,200 school buses, both diesel and electric. We're about the third largest district behind Fairfax and Montgomery County in the DMV area. We service about 85,000 students daily, transportation needs. And then we also manage about 700 white fleet vehicles as well. So we have roughly 12 bus terminals supporting 190 schools for our students. And we are currently renovating one of our bus terminals into an electric school bus lot. This lot is being built to house up to 90 chargers. And the initiative was actually started before I came aboard here on PGCPS back in 22, where they used some grant money from the ESSER 2 funding to purchase about 19 school buses, electric school buses. and mobile charging trailers to start. And this was basically a gap measure until the actual brick and mortar facility was built. And so right now we are utilizing only about 4 of those buses because we've had a gap in production of receiving the mobile trailers. So we are working with what we have, utilizing electric buses in some of the most underserved areas, and we are gaining knowledge on how best we use them, because definitely we can't use them in the same capacity as a diesel school bus, and that's some of the things that we have to rethink our thinking and with routing from that standpoint. So we are definitely looking to crawl, walk, run effect for us. So we're taking it very slow and just making sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's and looking at all of the barriers that come and making good, sound, direct decisions on the path we take. I will tell you quickly the chargers. I have one mobile charger that's a level 3, and I have one charger that is a level 2, and it has about 7 dispensers on it. So if you think about the little daisy flowers, it's kind of a setup for charging the buses. So it's new, and we're working through it as best we can. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kiba. I really appreciate you coming on and just kind of giving your insight into what you've noticed and everything that you're going through in that. So thank you so much. So next, we will get into a quick little electric school bus EV kind of one-on-one, just to kind of give a little breakdown and get into kind of the basics of what this process necessarily looks like from start to finish, and challenges and anything that may come up along the way on that. So I'm going to share my screen. And then if there are any questions, we can wait until the end for each of the presentations, or you can put them in the chat and we can also address them that way. So let me get this up. Okay. Okay, so this is just a little brief introduction, like I said, specifically technical assistance for the electric school bus education. So these materials you're going to see for my presentation is from Clean Cities and Communities. I'm the coalition director for that from Maryland, and it specifically focuses all about transportation and supporting anyone who wants to electrify or use alternative fuels. So that's just a little background of where I got this information from. So I will go to the next slide. Yes. And can everyone see my slides and see my screen? I just want to make sure because I can't see you all. Yes. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I always struggle with that, so I appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to dive into a very brief introduction of electric school buses, training, and things that you're going to want to consider prior to purchasing them using this technical assistance video series that is from Clean Cities and Communities. So there is a really cool thing that the Alternative Fuels Data Center has available for anyone looking to make this switch. And specifically, there is a video series that is called Flipping the Switch on Electric School Buses. I've gone through this as well. It's very user-friendly. It kind of just gives that brief introduction into what electric school buses are all about and all the different aspects. So it really focuses on the detailed information about the benefits of ESBs, examples of their use, and different resources that you can use to implement them for K-12 schools interested in deploying these school buses. And this is meant to evolve over time, and it is always being updated in terms of new information that is produced and out there. So like I said, this is a training series. They're all videos, not too very long, very user-friendly to go through. There are up to 3 modules in each part of this 8-part series. There are videos and handouts And you'll go through the following topics if you choose to look at this to kind of understand a brief introduction to electric school buses. So first part is the ESB introduction. Next is working with your electric utilities, which is a very important aspect of this. Vehicle requirements, the chargers, the infrastructure planning and solutions, which can have a big chunk, as Kiba mentioned. That is a big chunk of making sure you have enough chargers and seeing it actually works with your depot. Vehicle and use performance, driver and technician training, and then a lot of the cost factors. They like to include a lot of that because that is always something that a school district is really looking to understand. So they recommend that you watch those videos in order, and there's the webpage right there in the link if you do want to go that route. And like I said, this is recorded, so we will post it on our website if you ever want to revisit this presentation. And then the next slide. So part one is strategically just going to be talking about what the electric buses are, pros and cons, the market, that's a very important aspect as well. Key challenges to be aware of, that's also in there. And this just gives a few statistics of the total US school bus population, and the majority of them are diesel. And then there is a small percentage right now that are electric school buses. So giving that little data analysis as well. So obviously, there are so many decisions you need to make. Are ESBs right for you? So this just kind of highlights some advantages and considerations that you are going to want to look at when considering getting these electric school buses. Just to name a few on each side's advantages, you have the quiet operation, you have the variety of vehicle options available, low electricity costs, and then considerations is it is a higher capital cost. You have to purchase those additional chargers. You may need to have some infrastructure upgrades. Looking at the utility rate structures is also sometimes a challenge. And then also you need to train those drivers and technicians so they can not only work on them potentially, but just understand the basics of what an electric school bus, EVs in general, are going to look like instead of a regular diesel bus. Part two, working with those electric utilities. So this is one of the things that we really strive to provide information on, so these school districts or anyone in general kind of understands that this is something you should be doing prior. So this video series, this part will provide guidance and starting that conversation with your utility, looking at your power needs for future charging infrastructure, and understanding the various utility rate structures. So it's really important to talk to your utility to understand what is going to be needed and find the most economical way to charge. And then another really unique aspect is seeing if there is these make-ready funding and if it's available to help the school district depots become ready for these charging of these buses on the utility side of the meter. And there's a link there, and I'll also send a link to like all these different links and stuff afterwards as well. But there is an EV Make Ready program that is available from, I believe it was WRI, my lovely friends. So they have that ready, and that is something that you can look at to see all the different options. And then understanding the vehicle energy needs, using all these different things, daily time traveled, typical auxiliary loads, a lot of different things that are in the big picture of working with this electric utilities. Part three is looking at the vehicle requirements. There are currently, the available ESB models, cost factors, range and efficiency considerations, incentives, battery life, and other considerations you're going to have to look into. And you're also going to want to look at this one because this specific part of the video series discusses how to analyze your vehicle routes to determine if electric is a good option for your fleet. So it provides that outlet, once again, looking at all these things before converting to see if it really is a good option for you and your fleet. So let's see. So this is looking at the current available ESB models. This is definitely prone to change. There are a lot of new ones coming out, but these are the few that we have seen most frequently. And this also is a link on the right. This was updated August 2024. So the market study and US buyer's guide is going to be a really crucial guide for all these school districts you want to look at because it is the most up-to-date. And once again, that is through WRI as well, who provided that link. So definitely recommend to check out if you're looking to see what's available and what's out there. So part four is looking at the charging infrastructure. So guidance on developing charging needs and selecting a charger is discussed in this part of the series. And then just a few considerations for choosing a charger, plan for charging installations and vehicle acquisition, choose a charging technology that can supply the most necessary power while also avoiding those costly installation options, and then understand both those energy requirements and power needs that you're going to have to look at as well. So charging is one of the biggest things that is really something that we have to make sure we have in place as well as the school bus, not one or the other. Installation considerations. So once again, really focusing, the video series really focuses on those installations of the chargers because they know that's a high demand and there's a lot of issues out there as well that can arise. So definitely, once again, working with your local utility throughout the planning and deployment process. Looking at the site layout, because that could also be designed to minimize conduit run and trenching length and plan for future growth. So these are just the few things that a fleet should consider when looking to have those chargers installed. Part 5, so this is the specific planning and solutions for the infrastructure. This kind of touches on the vehicle to grid aspect, and it kind of touches on the vehicle to grid and the barriers and opportunities that is associated with this type of technology. So these are just the few bullet points right here that are kind of unique to the vehicle to grid and just getting those chargers installed. So these impacts may require upgrades to the meters, electric services, and distribution equipment, which can be costly and delay installations. Managed charging, where charging is delayed during peak power concerns or power is reduced in conjunction with the charge session requirements, can also mitigate the need for upgrades. So a lot of considerations in terms of the infrastructure. And this is just a brief vehicle to grid overview, many different forms of advanced charging solutions. There are many out there, but there are barriers also to consider. Like I just mentioned, the managed charging, and then fleets should also look at tracking these opportunities and consider where pilot programs may be helpful, and that they could unlock the full potential for advanced charging solutions. So the vehicle in use performance, this part of the series will look at how to track ESP performance and why is it important to do so, electric school bus energy use and fuel economy, and also looking at the ESP range and reliability. So this is really important because it's a really good indicator to understand the technology's performance, control costs, and ensure it's the best fit for the job. Another really unique aspect is the telematics, charging software or data loggers, because these can help fleets track real-time data, receive that diagnostic information, optimize battery use, and also analyze charging strategies. So a lot of really good things can be come from the telematics and all those unique parts of the data process. So once again, a heavy part that I've heard from school districts and just working with many different stakeholders is that driver and technician training. So this part of the series looks at how you can provide driver and technician training on these electric school buses. So OBMs typically provide driver and technician training for the vehicles. A little glimpse is that these training helps to maximize the range of ESPs, reduce range anxiety, ensure staff is educated on this very new type of technology, teach these safe practices, and then ensure a smooth transition because it's very difficult going from that diesel to electric. And so we want to make sure it's smooth and they're comfortable with this transition as much as they can. And so number of trainees decreases. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of those technicians at the basic level of the electric vehicle basics and safety. And then as you get to the advanced technology, that is obviously where you're going to have less transitions and trainees on that part because it's much more higher. And there may not be a higher need for that as well. So the last part before my presentation ends is looking at those cost factors. You have the upfront and the ongoing costs. Obviously, the upfront costs are going to be the vehicle, the charging infrastructure, and then any of those electric infrastructure upgrades I mentioned. And then ongoing costs is going to be that potential maintenance, the operation, the training and education, and then the information technology and connectivity as well. So that is all I have for a little very brief introduction. into electric school buses and all the different aspects that go into it. I am going to stop sharing in case anyone has any questions or anything. I know that was a really little brief course of what is all about ESPs, but if anyone doesn't have any questions, that is a-okay. I will next move into the presentation for my electric school bus program that I am designing now and will be coming up very soon at MEA. So let me get right into that. We're just going to continue moving along. So let's see. Okay. Okay, and so yes, I see you can all see my screen. Great. Okay, so I'm going to get into my program that I've been designing for a bit, and I'm really excited about it. I really tried to make a fully all-encompassing type of program that can be really benefiting to these school districts. So I'm going to start. So just a kind of brief agenda of what my presentation is going to look like in the flow. I'm going to first give a little program overview, then get right into the requirements and eligible projects, evaluation criteria, and then some of the key parts of the grant that I think are really unique and good for everyone to know. Okay, so program description. So this program will support Maryland Public School students with the electric school buses. We are going to have $17 million in a one-time funding from the Moore Miller administration to advance this type of program in the state. It will be statewide competitive. And then key details is the deadline will be January 24th, 2025 by 3 p.m. So we will be launching this program very, very soon to get it out there so people can review it and ask any questions and apply. Eligible applicants. So it is going to be specifically the local educational agencies and the fleets or private vendors that operate on behalf of them. Eligible vehicles is only electric school buses. We say no retrofits or buses funded by other state grants or they are ineligible. So just to add that caveat. Okay, so program requirements and ineligible projects. So we are looking to replace those diesel buses, model year 2010 or older, or whichever is oldest in the fleet, whichever comes first. The vehicles are going to be domiciled in Maryland for a minimum of 3 years. That is just consistent with some of our other transportation programs that we've launched before. Data sharing with MEA for 3 years as well. This is specifically in reference to the quarterly reports that we have once these school buses are purchased and in service. We kind of request that just to have some data on our end to see if there's any issues you're having with the buses, and just to get a little bit information on the routes, charging usage, anything like that, the miles. And then another little requirement is the private vendors and nonprofits that are going to be applying on behalf. They must be in good standing with the Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxation. And then additionally, the nonprofits must provide evidence of a type of agreement, may informal or formal, something to show that they are working with the LEA at the time of the application. So that's something that we look to have just so we can see that it is a conjunction type of effort working together. And then ineligible projects is, I kind of mentioned in the last slide, but the buses that are previously funded through MEA's programs that we've had in the past, which is the Clean Fuels Incentive Program, the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Program, which is a quite an old one, but just to include it in here. And then specifically the medium duty and heavy duty zero emission grant program that we have. The medium duty and heavy duty program will be launching very soon. Actually, it already did a soft launch last week. But this program will only be for public schools. So the medium and heavy duty will have that outlet for if it's want to do private schools or anything like that. So there will be 2 outlets for any type of school district that wants to apply or they have a unique case. Lastly, for ineligible projects, retroactive funding for already purchased vehicles. So we're looking for buses that are going to be newly purchased once they get this grant to make it work. Okay, so evaluation criteria. Our goals for evaluation is make sure we're ensuring fair, unbiased, timely reviews. And our really strong thing that we're looking at is prioritizing those underserved and overburdened communities. We have specific criteria in here specifically for them to make sure that they are included and that we are really trying to make sure we're being equitable. So some key criteria, the quality of the application, the project cost and funding request. So we want to make sure it's aligning with the program goals and the detailed budget narrative. The detailed budget narrative is only if applicable, because it may not be something that you have ready or that you're ready to provide until you actually get that bus. So we are fully understanding of that and understand that that may not be something you can provide at the time of an application. Project benefits and community impact. This is something that we have a really high points, as you can see, for this program, because we really want to focus on those greenhouse gas reductions and also the Title I school impact as well. So we have high points for that. Project planning and schedule. Once again, this is something that you may not have available at the time of the application. And so once you do get the buses, if you have more plans in terms of milestones, working with your different stakeholders in risk mitigation, that is something that we can take after the grant has been awarded to you, because we know you may be very new to the process and we want to be very cognizant of that as well and not expect all these things that you may not fully know or have ready yet. And that's perfectly fine. Project communication and partnerships. So this is kind of making sure that you're working with your utility and other community partners to make them aware of this transition that you're looking to do. And then lastly, project equity. This is specifically priority for the Title I school district. So we have that in there specifically for them as well. So lastly, some key grant features. The award formula highlights, we're giving up to 85% of the incremental costs covered for the new electric school buses. The maximum award cap is $1.5 million per grantee, $2 million for eligible applicants. And then the funding scope is, like I said, I wanted to make sure I had a program that wasn't just for the chargers or for the electric school buses. So I made it so it includes the school buses, the charging infrastructure, and there also is the potential for associated costs. So there's 3 categories for that one. The first one is the project startup for EVSE or facility training. We want to provide a little extra funding if that's something that a school district might need. And then also the school district technician training, wanted to provide funding for that. And then lastly, some school districts might want to have that lift equipped accessible buses aspect. So getting those lifts onto those buses, I wanted to provide funding for that as well. So a lot of different things that are included here. And then lastly, the charging incentives can also be stacked with other programs, which is nice. And then I touched on this briefly before, that quarterly report. So reporting requirements, we require those semi-annual updates on mileage, energy use, student impact, and any issues you may see with those electric school buses. And once again, this report is once the buses have been purchased and placed in service and they're being used, however often you guys see fit. And then the telematics data is also encouraged for efficiency as well. So that is all I have for my program. That's just a very brief introduction, but does anyone have any questions while I have it up on the screen? And oh, yes. Yes, go ahead. Joanna.
Hi, I'm Joanna P. Sunier with Baltimore City Public Schools, and I have a couple of questions. The first is, you said that it could be stacked with other funding, but you use the term charging infrastructure funds. So are you distinguishing between bus funds and infrastructure funds?
Yes.
So when we apply, we're asking for a certain amount of money for a bus and a certain amount of money for charging infrastructure, and we can't stack the bus money, but we can stack the charging infrastructure money?
So yes, so that is essentially saying that you can apply for a certain number or certain number of money. And the stacking is really meant to say with other state or federal programs. So like you can request as much as you would like. And obviously within the scope of the funding that we have available. But it could really be anything that you would feel feasible for whatever your needs are. Does that make sense? I'm sorry if that didn't.
I'm sorry, I'm still confused, so let me just maybe clarify.
Oh no. Okay, we'll wait for her to come back. Oh no.
I could make a guess at what she was probably going to ask.
Yes, go ahead.
I think, and Joanna, please correct me if I'm wrong here. I think what you were going to ask was, can you stack, in particular, the EPA Clean School Bus rebates for the buses with this funding?
And if that's if that's the case, then yes, you can. You can stack. Yeah, exactly. And with Diego is, yep, you can stack EPA, anything with this grant. So that is a nice thing. It's not just the chargers, you could get the EPA, you could get any of charging, and then we will still accept your application. There is the caveat that if you do obviously apply for those other funds, on the application, there is a spot where we ask, are you applying for these other programs? And we just took that into consideration and potentially could give more points because you were looking to get other funds. So we're very, very open to that idea, and we encourage that idea. Yes, Gary.
Now I was going to piggyback what you're saying to the folks here. We strongly recommend any source of funding you can find outside of MEA, especially the federal funds. So we definitely welcome all of that, not just the transportation, but any other program that you decide to apply for MEA. We strongly recommend it. In fact, we encourage it. Yeah.
Okay, and let's see. Let's see. Okay, so Joanna, I see your other question. Is the MEA, and I'll read it for everyone else in case they're curious, is the MEA cost per bus a score metric, i.e. the less we ask for per bus, the better? And Diego, you can also weigh in on this as well. Not per se. There is really no metric for if you ask for a certain number for a bus or a charger. We just are looking to see, if you've seen if this is going to be the need you have for your school district. Is that what kind of what you need? Diego, do you have anything to weigh on that question? I know you've been looking at it. Maybe not, and that's okay. I think he's in a cafe. And then let's see, what was your other question? Community partner. Yes, so Joanna also asked in the chat, just for everyone, could you describe the community partner requirement more? And let me go back to that one. Okay, so community partner essentially just means that you are maybe working with nonprofits, maybe working with other school districts in your area. It's really just to show that you're really invested in trying to find a way to make it work between you and your utility, but then also all these other different community partners that could support you along the way. It's just kind of seeing that you've really done the homework and worked with anyone in your community, seeing their feedback, seeing their opinion on how this feasibly would work for you. So that's essentially what the community partner aspect is describing. And Kiba, I see you have your hand up.
Hey, yes, just understanding the stacking, right, on top of EPA grants. So obviously with the EPA, they only offer up a cost match, like a 70% match, and then school systems are tapped to fulfill the other 25%. So as part of the stacking, we can request that 25%. Yes. Okay.
Yes, as long as you're not, in the sense asking for more than, is feasible. Yes, you can definitely do that. For sure.
All right. That's a good point. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Does anyone else have any other questions on my program or any of the specifics? And once again, I'll have my email so you can give me any emails after this if you think of anything. But yeah, okay, well, if not, and Joanna, please let me know in the chat. Ooh, yes. Is there a minimum or maximum number of buses we can ask for money? No, there is not. There is no minimum or maximum but number of buses. It's more the it's more in terms of the maximum cap, which is 1.5 million per grantee. So as long as you don't exceed that, that is fine. Like if you ask for more buses than chargers, that is acceptable. As long as you stay at that 1.5 million, you're good. So no, there's no cap. Any other questions? Let me just go in the chat just to make sure. Let's see. Yes, okay, Joanna, thank you. I appreciate all these great questions. So Joanna's also asked, what is the 2 million for eligible applicants? That is on slide, let me see. Let's see, this one. Okay, so the 2 million for eligible applicants is going to be for those overburdened and underserved communities and the Title I school districts. So specifically, if we've looked at where you are located in the state, we'll do our own research, or you can provide that research as well. There will be a part in the application where you can provide that. And if we see that you feel the need is for the full 2 million instead of the 1.5 million, we will be granting that. So we want to give that there is the option to get the full 2 million as well, not just the 1.5. So that's where that is coming from. Okay, I hope that answered all your questions, Joanna. I really appreciate all those. Those are really, really helpful. If there's nothing else, and you can always use the chat along the way as well, I will then move it on. I'll stop presenting and I will start the next presentation. Let's see. Thank you, Diego. Diego said that we will also set up more time for one-on-one calls with anyone as well. So this is not the end. This is just the start. So the next presentation is going to be from Mike Jones at NREL. So about the Clean Bus Planning Awards program. So let me share my screen and then we will get right into it. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so whenever you're ready. Yeah.
Thanks. Like I said, I'm Mike Jones. I'm a project lead here at NREL and was previously with MEA. So when this program announcement came out from MEA, certainly sparked my interest, and I thought it had some great synergies with a Clean Bus Planning Awards effort that I am leading at NREL. So I'll talk a little bit more about that today. Next slide, please. So generally speaking, transition planning is kind of the focus of this opportunity. And again, I thought it aligned really well with some of the parameters of this upcoming electric school bus program from MEA. You may have hopefully noticed Natalie touched on the topic of planning and the fact that that will be a part of the MEA scoring criteria. So I really think that our program could come in nicely. So just at a high level, what is the value proposition of a school bus fleet going through a transition planning exercise before you to start, seeking grant funding for buses and actually putting electric school buses on the road? We think that it probably goes without saying that school bus fleets will really have a motivation to span the spectrum in terms of why they may be interested in deploying electric school buses, how many, how quickly, what their expertise and bandwidth may look like to do so. We think regardless of that fleet profile, that going through a transition planning exercise can really add value in a number of ways, and it really does help sort of set a vision for deployment and really rally support, kind of get everyone on the same page, both internally and externally. And we're having a third party come in, which is like what our program would do. Having a third party come in and helping you coordinate those internal and external project teams, it really reduces burden on fleet managers, pupil transportation directors, folks that their priority is to get students safely from A to B, may not always have a lot of staff or bandwidth time to look at all the things that go into planning electric school bus deployments. So we've heard from folks that we're working with that that's a really significant value proposition. Establishing realistic targets, both short-term and near-term. It's great to have all this federal funding available, but, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, the EPA Clean School Bus Program, unfortunately, has had a lot of folks sending money back to EPA because they kind of got big eyes, so a lot of funding was available, didn't really have a plan to actually implement the buses if they were in fact awarded. So going through a transition planning exercise, having a third party come in and conduct a really rigid and sound technical analysis on your routes, electric feasibility, infrastructure assessment, etc., can really help you develop not just maybe an optimistic or wishful thinking type approach to electric school buses, but really having an understanding of what is realistic both in the short term and in the long term as well. And really, this isn't just these plans hopefully will not just be a piece of paper that goes on the desk and collects dust. The folks that we've talked to that have completed transition plans really tell us that it's a foundation and a reference point, day-to-day operations, something that they check back in on consistently. Hopefully they're updating, over time. So we heard the EPA program mentioned a couple times. This program is intended to complement and support, of course, the EPA Clean School Bus Program, but also the MEA program as well. The EPA program, for anyone who's gone through it, doesn't necessarily ask you for a transition plan per se, but the grant program in particular does, seemingly with each funding round, ask more and more homework type questions. And we think that going through this program, going through an exercise like this can really give you answers to the test, so to speak, in a lot of respects. Next slide, please. It brings us to the Clean Bus Planning Awards. For all these reasons that we've kind of touched on here, the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation and NREL both felt that it would be really prudent to develop a new technical assistance opportunity to school and transit bus fleets with planning, whether that's pre-application or post-application. So this is an opportunity that's funded by the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, managed by NREL. Basically, what my role at NREL is to kind of be the overseer of the opportunity, kind of setting expectations. And we partner applicant school bus fleets with subcontractors, very highly qualified and experts in these fields to actually develop these plans. The biggest thing to stress here, and the bold and underlined text is not a typo, really want to emphasize that while this is not a grant or a cash incentive, this is a free technical assistance opportunity. There are no strings attached to getting this assistance. I know some of the local utilities in Maryland are maybe starting to offer advisory services that are maybe somewhat similar to this, but the utility programs do require you to, I believe, pay into that a little bit. So there is some financial skin in the game for some of those opportunities. We don't have that. This is entirely no strings attached. Any school bus fleet that comes in and participates, we're not going to be coming around and tapping you on the shoulder and mandating that you buy a bus the next day or anything like that. It's really just designed to hopefully give you the answers to the questions that you need to make informed and educated purchasing decisions. In terms of eligibility, I think a lot of the criteria that Natalie outlined for the MEA program more or less mirrors our eligibility. Generally speaking, if your school bus fleet is eligible for the EPA Clean School Bus Program, whether as an operator or a contractor, then we'd be happy to work with you and support you through this Clean Bus Planning Awards effort. We are accepting these applications on a rolling basis. I did drop a link to the chat to the website. I think when folks open that up and look at our application, we think it's a fairly unobtrusive, unburdensome process. It's just a Microsoft form with a few basic questions to kind of get us started, give us a feel for your operation and what type of assistance you may be looking for. At the end of the transition plan, there is an opportunity for deployment assistance to kind of extend that off-ramp for help a bit. But these transition plans are the key deliverable for this program. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that process looks like here on the thing in a couple slides. Next slide, please. I will just quickly mention that while this is a non-competitive rolling admission opportunity, we do have, of course, like everyone else, we only have so much budget and financial resources for this. As those resources become increasingly strained, we do reserve the right to prioritize applications that meet select prioritization criteria, and you'll see those laid out here. Again, we're trying to kind of align, this opportunity, with some of the federal opportunities. So if you're in a designated priority district for EPA, or if you meet, federal rural definitions or disadvantaged community definitions, et cetera, that is information that we ask for in the application, and we can use to prioritize select school bus fleets, as our funding becomes tighter and tighter. Next slide, please. So what's included in a transition plan? And this is a fairly high level overview. So I think you'll see a lot of elements, frankly, that Natalie kind of touched on, and some of the electric school bus training resources that are available on the Alternative Fuels Data Center. It's a great resource if anyone's not familiar with it. But again, I think the value proposition is, while there are some resources out there that kind of address individually each one of these elements, going through the Clean Bus Planning Awards effort and getting partnered up with a third party can kind of help deliver all of those elements cohesively and comprehensively in one package. I think the main points to kind of focus on here for these transition plans are the feasibility analysis on the buses and the infrastructure assessment. So our partners will work with you to analyze some baseline fleet data, do route assessments, understand what the energy requirements are for your buses, given your route profiles, how many miles you're going per day, per year, et cetera. We use that to get an understanding of how many routes can actually be electrified, what are kind of maybe the lower hanging fruit, what's the maybe more optimistic or more challenging, routes and buses to electrify. We also align that with your replacement schedule for when you plan to buy and replace buses. And we're also, perhaps even more importantly than that, try to parlay that into a virtual infrastructure assessment. So understanding if we do electrify this many buses, we're going to maybe need this much capacity. We are going to require roughly this many chargers. Is that feasible? Utility coordination is a big piece of that as well. So that's a big value proposition in and of itself. So there's a lot of other elements here. Again, we're kind of looking at the financial elements, total cost of ownership of all of that, emissions, benefits, et cetera. But really the crux of these plans are the technical analysis on the bus route analysis and the virtual infrastructure assessment. And I think maybe the most important thing to consider is this asterisk at the end. While we do kind of have a boilerplate that we generally work from, again, every school bus fleet is individual, has unique considerations and operational profiles. So these plans are tailored to your specific circumstances, your specific needs, your specific targets, goals, et cetera. Next slide, please. So I know this is a lot of text, and I'll try to go through this relatively quickly. But once we get an application, we'll confirm receipt. We schedule a 30-minute intake call just to kind of review the information in the application a bit more, use that to assess program suitability. I think one really important thing to stress here is that the Clean Bus Planning Awards is just kind of one spoke on the wheel, so to speak, of technical assistance that the NREL can provide and support to the Joint Office, EPA. So we're in the business of saying yes. If for some reason we determine that this specific opportunity isn't the best fit, there's a good chance that we'll be able to help you through some other avenues that some of my colleagues on my team here at NREL can help with. So we kind of do a bit of an application review, which is for now fairly nondescript. We're casting a big net and trying to work with as many fleets as possible. Assuming that everything kind of passes muster, we'll inform the applicant of our intent to move forward. At that point, we have to go through some paperwork on our side to line up the scope of work with the subcontractor. There's some negotiations on that side that frankly can take the most amount of time, but we're smoothing that process out and improving. So once we're able to get to an agreement with the sub to develop your plan, we'll schedule a kickoff call that will effectively serve as the start date for the project, where we introduce you as the fleet to the sub and kind of set the vision for the project. We expect all plans to be completed within a maximum of 6 months from that kickoff call. Hopefully that's just the ceiling. Obviously, there's no penalty if we can kind of get things moving a little quicker. Really, the biggest thing that determines how fast these plans go is really responsiveness from school bus fleets. As much as we would like to wave a magic wand and spit out a plan, it does require some time and buy-in from the fleet. There are monthly meetings where we're kind of checking in, monitoring progress. The biggest lift is just providing baseline fleet data. If an operator can give us data kind of relatively quickly, upfront at the beginning of the project, that really sets us up for success. So there'll be an opportunity to provide feedback on a draft plan, and then we use that feedback to complete a final plan, again, within 6 months maximum from that kickoff call. There is an opportunity after that plan is completed to have a bit of I guess what we're calling a post-plan presentation, where it's really just kind of a way of hand-holding, walking through the findings. That's where you can kind of recruit other relevant decision makers, maybe folks on your board or things like that, to review the findings and make sure there aren't any outstanding questions. But we're really hoping that the way that this is structured, there's really, I think, a lot of opportunity to provide feedback along the way. Hopefully, we're going to be in a position where there aren't any surprises by the end. And again, we're kind of monitoring on a case-by-case basis as funds are available, the opportunity to maybe extend that off-ramp of assistance following the completion of the plan. Next slide. And that's it. I dropped the website in the chat. That contains this email address that you're seeing on your screen. And again, would really appreciate and welcome any questions from anyone. We haven't had any plans or applications come in from school bus fleets in Maryland yet. So again, as someone who still lives in Maryland and worked at MEA for many years, I'm a bit biased and have a vested interest in boosting the interest of this program. And again, I think it really complements both the EPA program and MEA's upcoming electric school bus program quite well. So I would be happy to answer any questions anyone may have. Thanks.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, please, you can either unmute or put it in the chat. But if not, the link to the application is in the chat as well that Mike put in there. So if you want, you can check that out and get acclimated to what that's going to look like. And then, yeah, so if no one has any questions, we will move to our last presentation before we get into a little Q&A time. It is going to be from our friends at WRI. So let me stop presenting, and then I will put their up on my screen, and we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. My name is Phil Burgoyne-Allen from the Electric School Bus Initiative at WRI. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Clean School Bus Program from EPA, which is currently open until January 9th. And then my colleague Ben, who introduced himself before, is going to cover some information on federal tax credits. Next slide, please. So just quickly, I know I don't want to take up too much time on this, but just going to give a quick blurb about WRI. But basically, we are a research institution. We are a nonprofit. We operate globally in more than 60 countries, and our focus is on issues that impact the environment, impact people and their communities. So forests, oceans, cities, transportation. We try to have cast a wide net in terms of our expertise. Next slide, please. But I specifically work on the electric school bus initiative. So we are an initiative at WRI. Our goal is to electrify the entire U.S. school bus fleet. There's roughly 480,000 school buses in the United States. So it's the largest mass transit fleet in the country. It just happens to be very, like each individual district has their own fleet, right? So they don't all operate together or coordinate together, which maybe I wish they did that more, but we're excited to be working with school districts and communities and all other stakeholders who are involved in school bus electrification to try to make that possible. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the current state of electric school bus adoption. As Natalie mentioned in her presentation, only about 1% of the fleet on the road is electric right now. That is growing, but when we zoom out and we account for not just electric school buses on the road, but those that have been awarded funding, funding has been awarded for them, or they've been ordered and are awaiting delivery. All of those buses included, there's over 12,000 committed electric school buses right now. They're operating in over 1,500 districts and private fleet operators. Nearly 2/3 of them are in school districts with the highest share of low-income households, due in large part to some of the prioritization criteria in Natalie's program at MEA and the federal program I'm going to talk about as well. So we're excited to see that. These buses the committed buses are going to 49 states, District of Columbia, a number of tribal nations and territories as well. If you know anyone in Wyoming, give them a call. We'd love to get to all 50 states. And you can see on the right hand of the slide that these buses are operating across lots of different types of communities as well. Next slide, please. So for the Clean School Bus Program, this is a federal program from EPA. It was created by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, providing $5 billion over 5 years to help replace the worst polluting diesel buses. That's 2010 and older diesel buses. But you can also replace newer buses if you're going with electric too. So far, nearly $3 billion of that funding has been awarded. About 95% of that has gone towards electric buses. There's been a huge demand for that compared to other fuel types like propane and compressed natural gas. As I said, the fourth round of funding, which is featuring another $1 billion, is available right now through a rebate program. So it's a more streamlined application than a grant program where you need to write a project narrative. You really just need to get some forms signed and provide some background information on the buses you plan to replace. And again, those applications are due January 9th, I believe at 4 p.m. Eastern time of 2025. And so in addition to the money on the back end, you can also qualify for tax credits coming from the Inflation Reduction Act. I won't cover that now because my colleague Ben is going to cover that here in just a moment. Next slide, please. So this is a lot of information, but again, you can find all of this in the program guide from EPA on the program. But some quick hits here on the most important information to know. For eligible applicants, school districts, charter schools, Indian tribes, there are a lot of eligible applicants, but in general, if you're a school district or if you're anyone responsible for providing transportation, buying buses, operating buses, or working on charging infrastructure to support those electric buses, it's a pretty wide net, but you'll be eligible to apply. So as a school district, you can apply on your own, or you can apply through an eligible third party. That could be your vehicle dealer, a manufacturer, your school bus transport or your school transportation contractor. There are a number of third parties that can also apply on your behalf. For prioritized applicants, so it's based on districts that are considered high need. So that's based on levels of poverty. If you're some of the most rural districts, you can be prioritized as well. If you're funded by the Bureau of Indian Education, there are a couple other ways to be prioritized. But EPA has a list. It's linked here on the slide. Has a list of all the districts who are already prioritize. So you don't need to actually dig up this information. EPA has done that for you. If you're not on that list, some districts are eligible to self-certify for priority status. So that's based on title, like how many schools in your district are receiving Title I funds. Again, EPA has a list and has instructions about that. So if you're not on the priority list, check the other list of those who are eligible to self-certify. That can either be because you're not captured in the Census Bureau database that they use. So that's a lot of the charter schools or other really small districts that might not get wrapped up in that. Or if you're a really large district. So if you're 35,000 students or 45 plus schools, you are sufficiently large to self-certify either your entire district based on Title I status, or you can do just a subset of the least advantaged schools in your district. So I know PG County has self-certified in the past and was successful there. So very important to keep in mind. For the eligible buses, there's a preference for buses that are model year 2010 or older and diesel. So if you have those in your fleet, those have to be the first ones that you replace. If you run out of those or you don't have any in your fleet, you can replace newer buses. So there is some flexibility there if you're going with electric buses. They have to have provided regular service, so 3 days a week on average, and they have to be operational at the time that you apply to the program. So for the funding side of things, there are rebates available for up to 50 buses, as few as one. You can get up to $325,000 per bus if you're a priority district. If you're not a priority district, you can get up to $170,000. So it's a big difference there. But with programs like from MEA, where you can stack with the federal funds, you can hopefully piece some things together and still get, delivering at zero cost to the district. Although this current round of funding is not 100%, right? We know that. But it is still a pretty generous subsidy to that school districts often aren't first in line to receive. You can also get an extra $20,000 in additional funding per bus if you want buses with wheelchair lifts. You don't have to have the bus you're replacing doesn't have to have a wheelchair lift. If you can opt to do that for the new bus, regardless of what bus you're replacing. But there is some additional funding there. And then a few required forms. Your school board needs to sign off. It doesn't have to go through like a school board vote. Just someone on behalf of the school board has to say, we're aware that you're applying and we're okay with that. If you also need a form with your utility to just show that you're planning for charging infrastructure. Both of those forms are non-binding. So just because your utility makes an estimation of how long an infrastructure project might take or how much it might cost, they're not committing to that because, utilities, it's hard for them to do that in advance. So these forms are non-binding. You can always back out of the program if you want, but you can't apply after the deadline. So I push everyone to apply. You can always change your mind later, but you can't apply after the deadline. And then lastly, the school district approval form, that's only if you're applying with a third party. So say your vehicle dealer applies on your behalf, you have to sign off saying that you're aware of that. Next slide, please. And I know I'm running past my 5 minutes, so I'll keep the last part here quick. Just some lessons we've learned from other rounds of the Clean School Bus Program and from successful applicants. First, just some steps you should take as soon as possible. Accessing or verifying that you have access to your SAM.gov account. That's the System for Award Management. It's the federal government's website where they manage all federal funds that are going to grantees or awardees. So make sure that you have access to that, or whoever's in your budget office. Most districts deal with federal funds in some way, so you likely already have an active account, but you do need that in order to apply. Just coordination in general across school district departments, transportation, facilities, your school board, right? These are all folks who are going to be involved in the process. So make sure you're keeping everyone in the loop. Prioritizing your planning for charging infrastructure. As Mike from NREL said, a lot of districts kind of go buses first and then start on the infrastructure planning. That's how the money works, but you do kind of want to do that in the other direction so that you have a plan for actually charging those buses. And then the last couple here, engage with your school board and your electric utility. That's required, but also will help you in the planning process. There's a reason why they require it. So we recommend everyone does that regardless. And then lastly, centering equity in your community engagement and your electric school bus deployment. So being mindful of, which communities are the most overburdened, either by, poverty or air pollution, and being mindful about, where are these buses going to be? What communities are they going to serve? What routes are they going to run? And accounting for equity in that process. A couple other takeaways here, just a note, the lead applicant, if you're awarded, controls the funds. So if you have a really close relationship with your vehicle dealer, you want to go with them, maybe having them apply on your behalf makes sense because that's just who you've been working with. But if you want to take your funds and shop around and go to different dealers and look at different manufacturers, then you want to apply yourself, because if you apply through your dealer, they're the ones who are awarded and control the funds. So that's something to keep in mind. And then lastly, EPA is agnostic about who owns the buses. So if the buses you're scrapping were, maybe you didn't have any qualifying buses in your fleet, so another district is scrapping and your transportation contractor is managing that on the back end, or maybe your contractor owns the buses, EPA doesn't really care, frankly, who owns the buses, as long as the new buses serve the school district listed on the application. So we get a lot of questions of, we don't own our buses. Are we still eligible to apply? You generally will be. There are rules to consider, but in general, EPA doesn't, they're okay with different ownership arrangements as long as the buses are serving the district listed on the application. Next slide, please. So now I see a question here from Joanna in the chat. So maybe I'll just take that and then I'll hand it over to Ben. So clarifying question about who applies. If a vendor applies on our behalf, are we permitted to substitute? Great question. No, you are not. So, maybe if that vendor voluntarily wants to maybe try to pursue an arrangement with EPA to do that, maybe EPA would let that happen. I haven't seen that happen in my experience. So again, if you want to shop around with different vendors or put out an RFP, maybe your district requires you to do an RFP and get multiple bids, you might want to apply on your own. But if you have your local dealer who you've worked with for years and the rest of your fleet's also that manufacturer, then maybe that's a helpful option too. I've also seen a lot of districts who maybe they're working with a vendor on the charging side who's going to install chargers, help you manage your charging. Maybe they provide a software platform that helps schedule your charging and give you information on the bus and the batteries. Right, that entity would be eligible to apply too. So there are a lot of vendors in this space because you have all your traditional school bus vendors and the new, electric charging infrastructure related vendors too. So there's a lot of options for applying. But again, if you want to shop around, I recommend you do it yourself. And as I said before, it's a pretty streamlined process. You need to provide some information on the buses you want to replace. You need to get some forms signed, but you don't need to generate a narrative. You don't need, you don't have to have a plan for workforce training already developed, some of the things you see in these grant programs. So again, we like this program a lot because it is accessible. So strongly encourage folks to apply. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that, the federal election results will impact policy. So if you are interested in federal funding for electric school buses, we really recommend you apply to this round because it is the best option in the near term for that federal funding being there. So again, just something to keep in mind. And if you have any questions, we have more information on our website about how to apply to the program and some key considerations. So I just dropped that in the chat. And I will now hand it over to my colleague, Ben, to talk about tax credits. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phil, and thanks to the MEA team for putting on this webinar. I'm excited to share some information about tax credits, which are another great way to maximize cost benefits with electric buses. Next slide, please. So I do need to start with this disclaimer that this presentation is a summary of guidance that has been prepared by the IRS. This guidance is, as far as we are aware, is accurate. However, WRI cannot make any guarantees for the accuracy of this information, and we are not authorized to provide tax guidance, and we assume no liabilities for its use. Next slide, please. So elective pay, also known as direct pay, is the mechanism that allows school districts and other entities that are tax exempt to apply for these tax credits. It was established in the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed in August 2022. And as school districts, you're probably not used to paying taxes. What this mechanism allows you to do is still to claim these tax credits essentially as rebates without going through the standard tax filing process. Next slide, please. So there are two tax credits that are applicable for school districts that are interested in electric buses. The first of which is the Qualified Commercial Clean Vehicle Credit, also known as the 45W credit. And this is for the vehicles themselves. What's great about this tax credit is there's no geographic restrictions. Every district in every part of the country and all of Maryland is eligible to apply for this tax credit. And unlike grant programs, this is not competitive. There's no limit to how many of these tax credits the IRS is gonna give out. How this tax credit is calculated is that it's a maximum of $40,000 per electric bus. And again, you can apply for this credit for as many electric buses as you have. So if you're adding 20 electric buses to your fleet, you can apply for this credit 20 times. It's a maximum of $40,000 per bus. And it's going to be the lesser of, if you don't hit that 40,000 ceiling, it's going to be because it's either the lesser of the 30% of the cost basis of the total cost of the bus, or the incremental cost of that against a comparable vehicle like a diesel bus. What I'll note here is that other electric vehicles that are much smaller vehicles are eligible to apply for this tax credit, which is why you see that 30% cost basis or the incremental cost difference. 40,000 is usually going to be about 10% of the total cost of the bus, and the incremental cost difference is going to be more than 40,000. So what you really would be just looking at is the maximum of $40,000 per bus. Tax credits can be stacked with Clean School Bus Program grants, as well as state funding programs, including MEA's program. However, the one limit here is the total value of the grant and tax credit cannot exceed the cost basis, basically just that you cannot make money off of the bus, which makes sense. Next slide, please. And then we have a few examples here that show you exactly what this looks like with stacking. Of course, the cost of each electric bus is going to be a little bit different, but just for simplicity's sake, for these examples, we're assuming the purchase price for a new electric bus is $400,000. For School District A, they receive a grant that is $400,000 that covers the full cost of the bus. In this case, they would not be eligible to receive the tax credit because if you add that $40,000, that exceeds the cost basis of the bus. They're paying nothing out of pocket, so they're not able to receive that tax credit for reimbursement. School District B, they receive a grant that covers $375,000 of the $400,000, and the $375,000 we can say is a combination of a state funding grant and a federal funding grant. They can still apply for the tax credit, but they'd expect to just receive $25,000, which puts them up to $400,000. And then School District C, they receive a grant for $350,000. I'll note here, district funds, this is any like capital accounts the district has. These are unrestricted. They're not included in that calculation. So if you include the district funds to help pay for the bus, you'd still be able to receive the full $40,000 for the tax credit. And that puts you at less than the total cost basis of the bus. Next slide, please. Then the other tax credit that is available for districts is the alternative fuel refueling property credit, also known as the 30C credit. And this is for the charging infrastructure. And just like with the 45W credit, this is for each charging unit. If you add 20 chargers to your bus depot, you can apply for this credit 20 times. How it's calculated is it's either 6% or 30% of the project cost, which depends on if prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements are met, up to $100,000 per charging unit. Chargers are not that expensive, so what you really would be looking at is the 6% or 30% cost basis. However, unlike the 45W credit, there are some geographic limitations for this credit. Only school districts in areas that are considered low-income communities or non-urban areas are eligible to apply. The Department of Energy has put out a great map, which I'll share in the chat, by adding the zip code or the address of your bus depot into this map, you're able to determine if it's in an eligible area. What I'll note is that for some school districts, part of the district is eligible, part of the district is not. What the IRS is going to be looking at is the exact address of the bus depot and whether or not the bus depot is in an eligible census tract. Next slide, please. And then the process to claim elective pay, it's a three-part step. The first of which is pre-registering the projects when you receive them. Mostly it's just administrative information. I know for the buses, you need to add the VIN number, definitely keep the purchase receipts and all other information that goes along with the purchases. The next step is when you're ready is to file the tax return. What I'll say is that we have talked with districts that have gone through this process. Of course, filing taxes is never, necessarily a fun process, but the districts we've talked to have felt like this process is relatively easy and that the IRS has done a good job making this as simple as possible. So for most districts, I know most districts operate on a fiscal year that goes from July to June. If that's the case with your district, the application for this is due 4.5 months after the end of the taxable year. So that would be November 15th. First-time filers automatically get a 6-month extension, which would go to April 15th of the next year. While there's no guarantee that filing sooner will get you the funds sooner, that can be advantageous to you. So if you're able to get all the paperwork in place, I would suggest trying to file for the tax credits prior to November 15th rather than using that extension. And if you do so, that makes it more likely that you do get that tax credit a little bit sooner. And then the third step is just going to be receiving the payment. Next slide, please. And then we have 2 great ways to stay in touch with our team. First of which is we hold office hours multiple times every week. And this is a great way to get one-on-one support. So if you have questions about applying for the Clean School Bus Program, for the state funding program, for working with your utility or charging infrastructure or applying for this tax credit, this is a free resource that we offer. So you can sign up for it with this QR code on the screen. And I think we're also sharing a link to it in the chat. And we're happy to talk with you and to provide you with one-on-one support. And then the second great way is that we have a newsletter that we put out. And it's a great way to sign up and to stay in touch and to see what we're doing. And next slide, please. And then we've also put out a bunch of resources. In fact, we have over 100 resources that we've put out. What we have on the screen is just a small sample of the different types of resources that we have. And many of these resources are designed to school districts to support you with the process of adding electric buses to your fleet. So certainly encourage you to check out our website, and there will definitely be information on there that's helpful for you. Next slide, please. Yeah, and thank you so much for your time. And again, thank you so much to the MEA folks for your work putting on this webinar and your work running this state program.
Awesome. So if anyone has any questions, you can either unmute or you can put them in the chat. But yes, those are from our lovely folks at WRI. We appreciate you guys being on here today, and same thing with NREL and everyone else. So let me just double check. I think Phil has done a really lovely job. Thank you and Ben for putting all those links in the chat. And once again, this is recorded. So afterwards, we will send you all the recording and the link to everything that we've discussed today, presentation. So you all have that readily available to you all. But yeah, I'll stop presenting. The last part of this webinar is really just an open Q&A and roundtable discussion. We do have about 25 minutes. So if anyone has any questions that have already been addressed, we are all here now on the call to assist you in any way we can. So please let us know. This is your time to discuss with us while you have us. No pressure. And if not, that's perfectly fine.
I can go.
Oh, Gary. Okay.
Yes. This is from a state question, also federal question. With Maryland Energy Administration, we typically reimburse in arrears. So Philip, your question, any others here, from a federal standpoint, is it in arrears or is it more upfront for funding?
Yeah, it's a pretty clean handoff for upfront funding. So for the rebates, the way it works is if you win the rebate, then you have a deadline to submit your purchase order for the bus and charging infrastructure through EPA. So once you submit your purchase, so once you have your purchase order, which typically you have the purchase order for the bus and then you pay once it's delivered, so you can access the rebate after you have the purchase order. So it should be a pretty clean handoff of you put the order in, you get the rebate money, and then that rebate money goes to the bus. So you shouldn't need to pay all of it up front, right? You get that money up front. That's different than the tax credits. The tax credits are after project completion. So for buses, that means once your bus is delivered and ready to operate. For your chargers, I believe that means, once they're installed and ready to be plugged in and start charging vehicles. So for those, it's more on the back end. So you can get, once your project is completed, whatever your next normal filing deadline is for your tax year, for your fiscal year, you would file, and then you get that money afterwards.
Thank you, Philip.
Sure.
And I also want to make note, Joanna asked a great question in the chat. When will the MEA funding applications be posted? So, and I responded saying that hopefully in a couple of weeks, if not sooner, we hope to have that program launched on our webpage. And I included that webpage link in my chat as well that I just sent, just so you can see updates and see real time when that will be up and available for you all if you want to go that route to apply.
Yeah, and I'll answer Joanna's question here about the BGE program. So, we are tracking that. So for those who don't know, Maryland has a $200 million pilot program for electric school buses that goes through the 4 major utilities. So that's BGE, Pepco, Delmarva Power, and Potomac Edison. So those are the 4 major utilities. They each can get up to $50 million for these pilot programs. It's not funding from the state. It's, they fund that by spreading it out across electricity ratepayers. But so BGE has proposed a program, so has Potomac Edison. Those are awaiting a ruling by the Public Service Commission of Maryland. So to Joanna's question, I don't know when it will open, but whenever the Public Service Commission makes a determination, then we'll have some clear next steps there, but hopefully soon. But that'll be another great opportunity in addition to the MEA program of some dollars out there for electric school buses. I know MDE, the Department of the Environment in Maryland, has a program open right now for $3 million for electric school buses. So a much smaller pot of funding, but some more that's out there. So and that's another reason why the stacking for MEA's program that they're working on is great, because it allows you. A lot of state programs don't allow stacking. So if you get the federal rebate and the state grant, you have to pick and choose what you're gonna spend on. So we're really excited to see the stacking here too. So I think that'll pay dividends later on too, once the federal awards have been made and once these utility pilots start opening up as well.
Yes, and thank you, Phil, for bringing that in. MDE does have their program open right now as well. Even though it is only $3 million, that's still another pot of money that you could look at into getting. So once again, another good thing to look at. Does anyone have any other questions? If not, that is perfectly okay. I will, like I said, after this, I will send out an email with the presentations, with any links, anything that we have, just so you have it all readily available. So we'll just, wait to keep for a couple more minutes. But if no one has any other questions, or if anyone else wants to add any more insight or anything to any of the programs we discussed from our presenting team, go ahead and do that now if you feel you'd like to as well. Okay, hearing none. That is a-okay. We are so okay with that. I know we gave you a lot of information, so we will let you all just kind of soak that in, look at your opportunities. We've given you a lot of really good stuff. Hopefully that will really kind of show that you are here. We are supporting you as much as we can, and we're really trying to utilize all these great resources for you all. So like I said, and Diego, the section chief at MEA for transportation, said as well, we are open to having one-on-one sessions with you all as well. Thank you, Phil. I was going to find that, but thank you. I appreciate you doing that. Phil just sent the MDE funding program link in the chat as well. So another outlet that you can look at. But yeah, we are looking for one-on-one calls if anyone wants to have that to discuss our program. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got. So thank you all for coming today and listening and being attentive. I really appreciate it. And thank you once again to our WRI and NREL. Kiba, thank you as well. And Kristen for being here as well. Very, very appreciative of you all. So thank you and have a great rest of your week. And look out for an email from me, hopefully this week, and with more information about anything else we talked about. So thank you so much. Goodbye, everyone.